The title is a lie, but let me explain myself. Hey Hoties, welcome back to my channel. My name is hautemesstom and thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I want to talk about where I'm at with eyeshadow and a project. I don't know how much of this project is going to end up on camera, but I think it's going to be like a part of the greater hautemesstom universe. If you happen to be new to my channel, I feel some kind of way about eyeshadow palettes specifically. I have been just perpetually underwhelmed with eyeshadow palette releases. It's interesting being a content creator, even at my smaller size, that isn't really interested in eyeshadow. Now, I love eyeshadow. I don't want anyone to get that misconstrued. I love eyeshadow, and eyeshadow used to be my one true love when it came to makeup, where it was like the one thing I looked forward to doing. It was the first makeup skill I really honed in on because I was like, I want to be gifted at doing eyeshadow. But as time has progressed and I've learned a lot of eyeshadow skills, and I know what kind of colors I like to play with on my eyes, and I know what I like as far as eyeshadow goes, eyeshadow releases just don't excite me anymore. And eyeshadow palettes don't really excite me anymore. So I used to be a palette girl. I used to have so many palettes. If you go through any of my old declutters, you'll just see over time that I slowly lose more and more palettes. But at the beginning, if you go as far back as you can, eyeshadow palettes were the main part. And over time, complexion, I love foundation, I love concealer, I love blush, I love all of the other parts of makeup more than I love eyeshadow, and I find more nuances in those aspects of the makeup process than I do in eyeshadow. Now, that's not to say that there aren't nuances in eyeshadow, and I'm not trying to say that I am right and you are wrong if you are someone who likes eyeshadow, but just my relationship with eyeshadow has just changed. And I think that when you're in something like makeup or fashion or anything that has trends, there's a slow sway, right? And so we see it visually in trends. We're seeing on TikTok that what's being popular as far as complexion goes is full coverage, matte, baking our faces, which is stuff that if you were here on YouTube in 2016, we've seen this before. And I'm not saying what they're exploring isn't right, that I am now right, but back when I was exploring full coverage foundation, I was 7 years younger. I was in my mid-20s, and my face was probably more prepped to handle something like that, but I'm now in my 30s, and I have to, I have different concerns as far as my skin goes, and those are the types of things that I like to pay attention to. Eyeshadow also, as people age, it becomes more of a game for you because, stuff starts shifting, right? Some things start falling. That hasn't happened to me yet. Time is coming for all of us. There was a whole movie about it with Justin Timberlake, wasn't there? Which I technically saw, but I did sleep through it. I didn't go to the theater. I'm not a theater sleeper, but I very rarely go to the movies as it is. We were watching at my friend's house. I fell asleep. I was very tired. I was home from, it doesn't matter. I have noticed a trend in my eyeshadow usage over the past couple of months. Someone did suggest what I'm about to do, and I don't know if I'm doing exactly what they suggested, but it was a commenter. You've been around, I've been very verbal about my feelings about just eyeshadow and palettes and how I'm feeling about them. So what's going on now? What do I do? So I'm into I don't want to say that I'm 100% into one and done, but I do love the idea of just smacking something on the eyes. My ideal eyeshadow look, kind of bar none, what I normally end up doing is something like this. I take some mattes, mostly neutrals, then I search in my collection for really beautiful standout star of the show eyeshadows as what goes on my lid, and then I kind of call it. I just kind of call it. I don't need all kinds of eyeshadow palettes, so I'm gonna take a break from palettes. So there's another world of makeup, another world of eyeshadow, and I wouldn't say that I'm very tertiary in this world, but it's indie eyeshadows, single eyeshadows, build your own eyeshadow palettes. And it's a world that I'm familiar with, but it's not a world that I find myself in a lot. There are so many people who have just the eye for a color story where they can take brights and neutrals and mattes and shimmers and create beautiful color stories and be I'm going to just use this color story out of eyeshadows I already have. And I'm not quite good at that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove just eyeshadow palettes from the equation. I'm going to set them aside for a handful of months. And I'm just going to keep doing what I have been doing. I'm going to keep using mattes that I enjoy. When I remove the eyeshadow palettes, whenever I'm feeling in the mood for it, I'm not gonna like not allow myself to ever use them. But if I do decide to bring them out, I'm gonna keep them in my drawers because it's like, okay, I've missed you. And if you've watched Hannah Louise Poston's content, she has done something similar, but I think she did it with her whole makeup collection. She like, this is old Hannah content. Put a bunch of stuff in a box and then like as she missed it, she like would grab for it. I'm only really doing this with my eyeshadows. I feel like I rotate through a lot of my other categories very organically because those are the categories that I'm interested in. Like I go through all of my foundations, assuming that I like the foundation, like it gets put into rotation, you know, every now and then. I'm a foundation girly, so if there's a foundation, I'm gonna be wearing it. Here are like my quote unquote rules. I'm removing all of my eyeshadow palettes and we'll get to that in a second. I am allowed to use all of my single shadows and that includes mattes. So even if they're not the mattes that I'm going to talk about here in a second, I'm allowed to use any of my eyeshadows that are depotted. I have two big eyeshadow magnetic palettes. So this one has all of my shimmers in it. I just lost a nail. These are all of my mattes and it includes a lot of bright. I am allowing myself to use those in addition to some other things. I have a Viseart Pro Matte Grande 1X. So this is what it looks like. I'm allowing myself to keep this in the drawer. Both of my Hindash palettes well, this one's new, but I really like these for building out looks. I used Monochromance on my eye stay, but I have used the Beautopsy many times. Just like build a look, pull a shimmer for somewhere else. In case you don't know what these look like, these are Radiant Matte eyeshadow palettes. Oh wow, this one really isn't broken in yet. The Makeup by Mario, I often use these mattes to build out a look. I also like the shimmers in here, but this is like the only matte shimmer palette with one other exception that I'll be like keeping in play. And then I also am keeping the Yucca palette in rotation. It's just new and I'm still getting to know it, so I'm not ready to remove it from the situation. Anything that is currently in my testing drawer is gonna stick around for a bit, but here is just kind of briefly what's going. The Maya Industrial Pigments 1 palette, the gold palette, which I am conflicted about. I'm fairly certain this will be the first thing I end up going for, but we'll find out as the journey goes on. All of my motherships: Mothership 3, Divine Rose 1, Midnight Sun, Divine Rose 2, Mothership 5, this is like Bronze Temptation or Seduction, I don't remember, Mothership 1, the Gucci Palette Beauté de You, in the Evanescence and Hip Hop palette. If you weren't here earlier in the year, there's like a larger story to this, but I'm gonna rehash that story in an upcoming video. So these are all the ones that are gonna be out of my reach. I'm hoping I figure out which of these eyeshadow palettes I really feel are like worth keeping around, and I think I'm just gonna declutter the rest. Now, before any of you like gun for me, I know that a lot of you watch Hannah. I have been, I don't wanna say like accused. I think that people think I'm trying to emulate Hannah, but the reason this is all happening is because just the way I use eyeshadow is so different now. There's not a, if I'm not using the eyeshadow palettes, and I can get a look that I'm very satisfied with without these eyeshadow palettes, maybe even inspired by these eyeshadow palettes. Like if I want to do a red look and I don't have Mothership 5, I'm gonna be able to do a red look with all of these other eyeshadows. And it's like, is it satisfying, or do I feel like I need that Mothership palette? That's what I'm trying to get down to. That's where it's all headed. That's what I'm trying to boil it down to. It's not that I want to get rid of everything either. It's not like I don't, like I'm not like trying to hit some kind of like minimalism situation. To me, it feels like it's like something's gotta give. I have all these beautiful eyeshadows. I don't wear makeup every day. Like it's like they're not all seeing the light of day, and it's like, how can I love my collection a little bit more? Now I know like by removing them, these palettes from my collection, they're definitely not gonna get any, like they're gonna get a lot less left because they're just like not in the rotation. They're not in my mind. I find personally that indie eyeshadows are just much more exciting, and I love the matte shadows that I love. So I like Natasha Denona. There's plenty of Natasha Denona in those two big palettes, just like that I've depotted from palettes. I love Viseart mattes, and I like Hindash's mattes. I'm setting myself for success. I don't really care for Pat McGrath mattes, and while I do love the very like special shades that come in the Pat McGrath palettes, like look what's on my eyes right now. This is an indie eyeshadow. and it looks wet. It's very sparkly. It's like, you know, it's doing everything that those can do. So it's like, why not just go the route where I can recommend one eyeshadow? Like, if you, let's say you love my eyeshadow look one day, and this isn't for you, this is for me. Like, doing this project is for me. But let's rewind. Also, let's talk about you as someone who views and consumes my content. Let's say you love like one shade on my eye and you're like, I love that very special sparkly shade. What is it? Instead of me going to be like, well, it's inside of this $125 palette, I could be like, oh, it's this $10 single you can buy from a brand. It makes more sense. But that's also because that's the way I've curated my collection. I have a lot of singles. I like the mattes that I like. And that's just how I've been using my makeup recently. And so that is why, like, this project just makes a lot of sense to me. I'm really excited to get started. Like, I'm really excited to get the ball rolling on this because I do want to see what happens. Now, I am doing a declutter, and it's possible that some of these eyeshadow palettes might disappear in that declutter, but the same thing still stands. It is, if I'm not testing the palette, out of sight, out of mind. I'm not playing with it. Like, it's not something that I'm interested in. Oh, I do have a lot of makeup. You may know that I have some Rowan shades, some Rowan palettes too, that I just did not mention. They get to stick around because they're just one and dones, and I can build them into looks if I want to. That's okay by me. Look, I forgot about these. It's just about not really getting to know my collection. Like, I know that I have these, and I sometimes reach for all of these things. Is it worth my time? Is it worth the space? Is it worth the energy for me to have all of these things? I'm not sure that it is. And so that's what this project is going to boil down to. Something that I'm also probably going to do is, in that shimmer palette, I'm probably going to pick out some eyeshadows to like focus on at first. Some single shades that I'm like, they haven't been in rotation for a while. Like, what do I want to use on my eyes? Pull those out, use those a couple times, and then shuffle through. I think I might do that in short form. Like the process of just like, I picked these 10 shades, these are the 10 shades I'm focusing on, and then you'll see them throughout my videos. That's it. That's the project. That's what I want to do. I guess I'm gonna pop off these nails. Anyway, if you happen to be new to my channel and you are not subscribed and you wanna see the process and see what happens, I would love to have you subscribe. Make sure you like this video. And I'm also on patreon.com if you'd like to support me there. There's no pressure to you. I do some extra content there. It's just kind of like pay what you want to support the channel. But I do additional content, but like no matter how much you join the Patreon for, like the content's the same at all levels. And the podcast I do with Kackie, that's where it currently lives. Again, doesn't matter what level you patronize at. Remember to follow your hope and you will find me. I'll see you in a video very soon. Bye! Friends, the friends.